Those who forsake the law praise the wicked. Those who uphold the law resist them. Welcome to the Voice of Resistance. Here's your host, Randall Terry.
I'm joined by Dr. Alveda King. She is the niece of the late civil rights activist and leader, Dr. Martin Luther King, one of my heroes, as you know from watching this show. She is also the director for African American Outreach for Priests for Life, the pro-life group based in Staten Island. Dr. King, it's a delight to have you. Thank you for taking the time.
Hello, Randall. This is great.
Good
It's
to see you.
Yeah.
All right, let's start with the director of African American Outreach. That must be a tough sled.
Actually, working for perhaps one of the largest pro-life organizations in America and largest Catholic pro-life organization in America, it's a challenge. And I met Father Frank Pavone in the late 1990s.
Now, you're not Catholic, right?
I'm not Catholic.
Okay.
He's the national director of Priests for Life, and soon after I met Janet Morana, executive director. But we had so many things in common, and when I first met Father Pavone, he was quoting my uncle, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s 1967 Christmas sermon that my uncle spoke just a few months before he was killed. And he said, basically, if we respect the human personality, we won't kill anybody. And as Father Pavone quoted that, I said, you know, that's absolutely true. And my uncle was pro-life, I'm pro-life. And Father Pavone and I began to talk, and over the next few years, we began to appear together and do some pro-life work together. And formally, almost 10 years ago now, I became the director of African American Outreach for Priests for Life.
Well, there has been, as you know, this tension in the African American community because the polling data shows that most African Americans are in fact pro-life.
Yeah.
But it also shows that overwhelmingly they will vote party line with the Democratic Party. Obviously, I think the number was 92% of African Americans voted for President Obama, even though he is a diehard supporter of child killing. So what do you do in that arena? I mean, it would seem to me to be pretty difficult. And ultimately, what's your goal?
Over the last 10 years, I devoted almost all of my time to making sure that we inform, educate, and activate the African American community as to the truth that abortion harms all babies, often harms mothers, that abortion is decimating the communities of America, and the African American community is most impacted because we have about 13% of African Americans populating this great nation. And yet we get about 1/3 of the abortions. That's by design from Planned Parenthood, founded by racist eugenicist Margaret Sanger, who said that colored people are like weeds and they need to be exterminated. Let's not let that word get out, but let's put it in a pretty package and go after them. And that is what they've done. That's what they've done.
Successful. Do you find a receptive ear? What's the hearing that you get in the African American community when you bring this to them? Say, look, you got a Planned Parenthood right here in your public school or right next door, and they're targeting you.
When I started several years ago, people said that's something that rich, white, Republican men in closed rooms smoking cigars are making up. But we began to, through efforts such as films like My Alpha 21 by Life Dynamics, Blood Money, the film, the story of John, a baby who was aborted and left to die after he was aborted, which, by the way, the President of the United States says that if a baby was marked for abortion, if the baby lives, leave the baby to die because the intent was to abort the baby. And so I guess to answer your question, what's so remarkable is that while many African Americans will be pro-life and think that's wrong, they could still vote for candidates that thinks it's okay to abort babies or to harm those babies and the wombs of the mothers. So there's a disconnect. People cannot see the connection between morality and letting your vote follow those values that you know are right in your heart. There's been a disconnect.
It'd be like voting for Herod after he authorized the murder of the babies at Bethlehem. God have mercy. It's time for me to take a break. I have been joined by Dr. Alveda King, and we will be back and join her visit in another segment. Hope you're enjoying it. You're listening and watching The Voice of Resistance. If you own a business and would like to advertise on our program, please contact us. We are currently seen on over 130 television stations from coast to coast. We air at 8 p.m. Eastern, and then all times are local. We have a lot of reach, friend, and this is an opportunity at a great price for you to get your product or your service in front of hundreds of thousands, maybe even millions of people. Also, if there's something that's important to you and you'd like to have a month where you just say thank you to this ministry or promote a certain ministry or a certain cause, contact us. Our rates are incredibly affordable. You'd be surprised. And you, again, can reach into hundreds of thousands, perhaps millions of homes. We're currently seen possibly in over 30 million homes. So give us a call, give us an email, and we'll put a commercial up for you. It took me 14 years to write it. 4 rewrites, countless edits. I poured my heart and soul into Dragon Slayers. At points a very inspiring and painful book to write. I encourage you to go to our website and look at the reviews that we have gotten from readers of this book, and then avail yourself. It's an allegory, and I promise you, you'll be inspired. I'm joined by Dr. Alveda King, the niece of slain civil rights leader Martin Luther King. She is just a delightful woman, very intelligent, very articulate, author of 8 books, and your latest book is coming out soon. King Rules?
King Rules, that new book that talks about growing up in the family. My father, Reverend Alfred Daniel Williams King. Yeah. Reverend Alfred Daniel Williams King, A.D. King, Martin Luther King's younger brother. There were 3, the sister and then the 2 brothers. And they grew up together to become preachers and civil rights activists. Martin was the most famous. My daddy, as the younger brother, thought that his job was to support his brother and to help protect him, sort of like Bobby Kennedy and wanting to protect his brother John. But you know, interestingly enough, after President John Kennedy was assassinated, his brother was. So in 1968, my uncle, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., was shot. In 1969, my dad was killed and thrown into a swimming pool, and they pronounced it finally accidental drowning, but there was no water in his lungs at the time of his death.
I'm sorry for your loss. What a heart-wrenching history. I have been heavily influenced by the writings of your uncle and footage of him, sermons of his, the value of civil disobedience. By the way, have you ever been arrested?
I've been arrested for civil rights in the late 1960s for the open housing movement led by my father. He was the founder of the Kentucky Christian Leadership Conference, and we marched for open housing, and I was jailed during that time.
Okay. We have a history in this country and other countries showing the profound impact of civil disobedience on both the culture at large and politics in specific. Discuss the need for tension, creative tension, as your uncle called it, in the fight to make it a crime to kill babies in the womb.
There must be creative tension where a group of people who can agree, who can lay aside personal agendas, who can say, we're all doing this together. It doesn't matter who our leader is, we're united under God, and we're going to resist this evil. The enemy is not going to come from within. We're going to resist the evil together. And so my uncle had the ability to bring people from various factions together, leaders. He was a leader of leaders. And so they were all able to bring themselves together and to go in the face of evil in their day. It was guns and dogs and billy clubs and bombs. Martin's house was bombed. My daddy's house was bombed. Daddy's church was bombed. They faced all kinds of adversity, but they convinced people that nonviolent resistance against evil will stop the evil and cause the evil to fall. And I actually saw them do that in their lifetime. Now today, the same thing has happened with peaceful, nonviolent resistance to abortion. But it must be nonviolent. That means that in the pro-life community, we can't want abortionists to be killed. We can't blow up abortion clinics. and all of that kind of thing. But we can stand in front of the abortion mills. I don't call them clinics because they kill people. Clinics heal people. But we can pray in front of an abortion mill. We can raise up a pregnancy care center. We can elect people who will put into place godly laws that will protect babies and mothers and the wombs. So those are the kinds of things that we can do. We can do those things non-violently. We will go to jail sometimes. We will be trampled. We will be hurt sometimes. But we have the obligation to continue to tell the truth, bring it before the public, and then pray that God will intervene and begin to melt hearts.
We have about a minute left. There is a severe disconnect with pro-life sentiment in the African American community and the way they vote for pro-abortion candidates. How can that be overcome?
We are beginning across America in the African American community to bring so much truth to life that over 56 million babies in the year of 2014 now are dead by legal abortion. And 1/3 of those almost are African American babies. When we get African American pastors and leaders to understand and believe that and begin to share it in their communities, when we see pregnancy care centers emerging in urban communities, outnumbering abortion mills in communities, and women and men finding that abortion is not my only option. There's a dark plan to cause me to want to abort my community. As we begin to do that, it is actually following the vote. We have some Democrats who are beginning to accept the pro-life platform, and we have African Americans now who will vote for Republican candidates because of life. And so we're expecting to see more of that.
I'm with Dr. Alveda King. Got to take a break. We will enjoy another segment with her. You're a delight to have.
Thank you.
God bless you. Friend, this program is supported by friends like you who believe in what we are doing. We run a very tight ship. Thankfully, we are on over 130 stations across the country, having tremendous impact. We get emails every day. We get letters in the mail, not every day, but almost every day. We hear from people who love what we're doing. What people don't understand is that it's sort of expensive to produce a television show like this. It doesn't require earth-shattering funds, but it does require financial help. So I am asking you, if you enjoy this program, throw us a $10 or a $20 bill every once in a while, or even a $50 or a $100 check. You see the address there on the screen. Your gifts are not tax deductible, by the way, because we want to be able to say what we want to say regarding politics without the IRS telling us no. So if you like the program, I ask for your support. I'm with Dr. Alveda King, the niece of slain civil rights leader Dr. Martin Luther King. She is the director for African American outreach for the pro-life group Priests for Life, based in Staten Island, New York, directed by my longtime friend and associate, Dr. Frank Pavone, or rather, Father Frank Pavone. I want to give you as much time in this to muse. We've discussed in other segments the disconnect between the pro-life sentiment of much of the African American community and the vote and the party line sense of, I go into that booth and I'm going to vote for a Democrat no matter what, just like some people do it with Republicans. And my line to people is put principle first, put life first, not party. My study of the allegiance of the Democratic Party to the Democratic Party of African American leaders shows that it's a fairly recent phenomenon, way more Republican devotion for the first 100 years after slavery. But that there is an incentive here, whether it's various government programs, fealty to LBJ. I mean, what are you up against historically in the last 40 years? And what will it take to get people to put life ahead of party allegiance?
The African American community, of which I'm glad to be a part, we are a very loyal people group. And once we're convinced that our loyalties belong somewhere, it's hard to get us to move. Prior to the exodus into the Democratic Party, most African Americans were Republicans. And of course that changed when President Kennedy was running for office, and my grandfather, Dr. Martin Luther King Sr., was trying to get help, and his wife, Alveda King, to get my uncle released from jail. And Richard Nixon actually wanted to help him, and his advisors said no. President Kennedy was not so excited about helping him, but his brother, Bobby, and other advisors said, you've got to help this man. And so the media captured that, and Kennedy became that hero of the African American community and much of the American groups of voters. And so the votes of the African Americans emerged into the Democratic Party and has primarily been there out of loyalty without full understanding. And so, for instance, many people...
Do you think, forgive me for interrupting, do you think that there is also a connection to LBJ and the Great Society programs? In other words, what level is... Because you're right, and I've covered this on the show, that the history of it is when President Kennedy, who was running, helped get your uncle out of jail, that was a huge seminal turning point.
That did that.
And then the next one was the Great Society programs, which gave the voters a financial interest in remaining loyal to the party. Yeah. What place do you feel that plays? And given whatever place it plays, how difficult will it be to be overcome?
Well, without understanding, people just embrace those programs. Like 50 years ago, in the year of 2014, it's been 50 years since the Civil Rights Law was passed. That bill became law, and yet, you see, today in 2014, the youngest and weakest, the little babies in the womb, have no civil rights even after all these years. And then all of the careism programs that should be connected to the African American community and every community in need, there are so many things attached to it. For instance, right now they're saying you can't have health care in America unless you give away free birth control. And that's the HHS mandate. And I say, you know, my daughters don't need free birth control. They don't need easy access to abortion. They need good education, good values, the opportunity to contribute positively to society. So to tell my daughters that their wombs need to be invaded with chemicals and surgeries and killing babies in order for them to be successful, that is something that amazes me, that any part of our community will embrace that.
President Obama promotes it.
HHS mandate, pushed by the health care bill of President Obama.
Well, what do you think it's going to take to break that loyalty? And loyalty, I remember James Carville wrote the book Stickin', where he talked about his fealty to President Clinton in spite of Clinton's, difficulties.
Didn't matter what he did.
Right, I'm your friend, I'm sticking with you, and I'm...
Loyalty,
right.
Misplaced loyalty.
So what will it take to...
I believe that truth, education, and I love President Obama. I've been to the White House twice, told him I'm praying for him. Do not agree with his policies, do not embrace those policies. And so I'm giving the African American community this thought. It's okay to love the president. It's okay to pray for the president. It's not okay to encourage the president to continue to support harmful policies by just giving him a free ride with a vote.
Well, the ride illustration is, if you say to me, you're going to rob a bank and you're going to buy groceries for your mom and get some medicine for your kids, and I say, well, hop in, and then you go and rob the bank and shoot somebody and then go get the groceries and go get the medication. If you get caught and I get arrested too, I'm an accessory to the murder, and I could say, well, I didn't support the murder. I just wanted to help get groceries and medication.
Yeah.
So
But your responsibility and obligation would be to say, you don't have to rob a bank to feed your children. Let's find another way to do it, and let's do that together.
Right, and I ain't taking you to the bank. And so that's the vote. The vote is to take the person to office, whether it be the White House, Senate, wherever it is, and then they have the power to commit the crime against the babies.
Yeah.
So what I'm trying to figure out is, how do we make this connection that jars the human conscience that our vote is the political currency of our ethics?
Well, we must say to the African American community or the other large people groups, over 50% of Catholics voted for President Obama.
It's a crime.
Most women voted for the president. And so we say now, hold him accountable. Ask him to do something that won't kill us. Ask him to do something that will heal us.
I'd like to go a step further and say you cannot ethically vote for this person, because if you vote for them and give them the authority and the power to commit these crimes, you share in the guilt of the crime like I would share in taking somebody to a bank to rob the bank.
I understand that one.
Yeah. It's been a delight to have you, and I hope your new book, King Rules, is a smash success, and I'll give you one of mine if you'll give me one of yours.
I'll get one to you.
All right. I'll give you one of mine off the air.
Thank
My
you.
latest book, Dragon Slayer. This is shameless self-promotion. Buy her book, King Rules.
Buy both books.
God bless you. Good to have you.
Thank you.
I want to invite you to go to our website. Almost every book that I have ever written is available as a PDF online for free. We have a ton of products, training materials, tools that are available for you for free. All we ask for is that you give us your email address. That's it, so that we can stay in touch with you, and yes, from time to time, ask you to support this work. So I'm inviting you, go to the website. Now, for those of you who say, well, I don't want a PDF, I want a real book. You can get one of my books. All you have to do is pay for shipping and handling, and then give whatever gift you want. And if you can't afford anything, we'll send you the book for free. Just pay shipping and handling. Why are we doing all this? Because we want to change the direction of the country, and we need to raise up a fresh generation of warriors to do that. That's why we have this tool. I invite you, go to the website, see for yourself. I have been a leader in the pro-life movement for 30 years. And sadly, we have not prevailed in our goal to make it a criminal act to kill an unborn baby. There's reasons why we have failed. I wrote this book, A Humble Plea, to Catholic bishops, to evangelical clergy, and to lay people, explaining where we went wrong and what we have to do to prevail. We've made this available as a PDF online for free. I encourage you to go and download your own copy. We thank Dr. King for being with us, and I want to just challenge some of our Caucasian viewers. I admit that I have been greatly distressed at points over the fact that so many African Americans are, without question, pro-life. They are in favor of marriage being between one man and one woman, right? But then they still vote party line Democrat. They support what are arguably candidates that are hostile to Christianity applied to public policy. Some of them are just flat out godless. And yet, so many African Americans keep voting for them. But before you or I become too judgmental, let's remember something. The religious right, in a great number of circles, has become as maniacally dedicated to the Republican Party as the African American community has been to the Democratic Party. I have been at times in very fierce debates with Christians, white evangelical or even white Catholic Christians, who say we've got to vote for the Republican because if they control the Senate, then they can confirm our judges. Or we've got to vote for Republican because if they have the majority in the House, then we can get the legislation that we want out of committee, blah, blah, blah. And the argument always devolves to the lesser of two evils. So allow me to make a little bit of a hard exhortation to you. If you've got a dysfunctional family, say so. If you have a crazy aunt in the basement, admit it. And whether you're a Democrat or a Republican, we have bad people. We have people who are promoting immoral, even godless policies in both parties. The murder of babies, the attack on Christian marriage, the spying on our citizens, the federal plantation that has 80-something million of us working to support 140-something million of us, all right? We have grave problems, and these things are happening from the leaders and the members of both parties. It's time that we put principle first. We have to not show blind loyalty to the crazy aunt in the basement. We have to say, we have a crazy aunt in the basement, and we're not giving her the keys to the car, and we're not going to let her define our family's agenda. So if you're a Republican or a Democrat, be willing to break rank with your party, be willing to break rank with your candidates, and say, no, I will put principle first. And if that means I cross party line to vote for somebody, that's what I'm going to do.